Welcome boys and girls, Christine here with a discussion about patch 6.2 for Total War Warhammer 3 Immortal Empires, which Creative Assembly has revealed and given details on what they're going to cover in their dev blog. So next week, they're going to publish the full release notes for 6.2 as well as the update itself. But they do want to give us a heads up of what to expect. Extensive revisions to magic items, introduction of the AI improvements tested in the proving grounds, the introduction of a few new magic items, and the arrival of 2 new units, Hobgoblin Bolt Throwers and Blood Knights. So, they do go into quite a good amount of detail over here with respect to magic items, how they work, and what they're looking to change. But here are some of the key takeaways. They aim to standardize their approach. It does not establish it as an iron rule that can't be broken. If an item ends up 10-15% outside of the bounds of our rules, we're okay with it so long as it enhances your campaigns. They populate item pools with all new effects. Playing effects have never been used in items before, such as generic sources of barrier or battle healing cap. Extending the effect pool lets us reduce the overlap of common choices and pushes the identity of each item even further. Make item rarity translate with item power level. So item rarity drives how commonly an item should appear as part of random generation. Ideally, this means that the items you see more should generally be much more interesting or a lot more powerful. And they've received reports that a lot of players find the management of excessive amounts of items frustrating or boring. So they're aiming to reduce the number of decisions being made, but make each decision more meaningful. Now, the way they're doing that, beyond changing the items, they're also changing how item merging works, and they're also changing how many items are going to drop in a campaign. So they do give some examples over here of item changes with respect to, like, you have an item that gives you spell resistance. Now it's going to give you spell resistance and barrier hit points. That's just an example over there. There's plenty of others. But one important thing here, on the item availability side of things, they want to address item spam. In any given standard campaign, we generally find that a player will end up with with tens of unused items, going to the hundreds in much longer campaigns. And this extreme amount of items can cause knock-on to other systems, especially the UI. How about improving the UI? Fusion, Wizard, or it exists, right? We find that equipping items can become much more difficult and tedious. Yes, so that means extra scrolling. So what have they changed? Well, based on what I'm reading, they haven't changed the UI, but there's now a lower drop rate for all items, reducing the amount that you'll gain across a campaign. Now, the way this works is a bit interesting, but we're confident that this is a positive change given the huge amount of items that you can currently acquire. The drop rates are now at a much more sensible level. I wonder what they consider sensible, really. Like, are we going to play entire campaigns and only get like 20 items or something along those lines? We'll see about that. The item drop chance effect remains unchanged across the game, so you can still focus on that if you want to. But until now, item drops have been completely random. Going forward, however, the game will understand which items have already dropped in your campaign, which items you are and aren't using, offering up items that we can see you don't have already, instead of giving you more items that are similar to the ones that we can see are just sat as unused in your item pool. Well, see, the problem with that, I understand the mentality here because there's certainly a lot of items that do end up being unused. But the problem is, on the subject, one of the reasons items don't get used is because we just don't want to go for the hassle, not because they're not necessarily that useful. We just don't want to go for the hassle of merging items, sorting everything out. So also, yeah, a lot of people just find it very tedious even with just a couple of items and don't think it's like, oh, it's worth equipping just, this gray staff. So I think that there's a possibility here that what this is just going to result is in screwing people over who just don't care about gray items. Like, personally, I don't. Most of the time, I only equip green and blue items more often than not. That's really worth it. And with item fusing, they're also changing how that's working to an extent. So, very importantly, a fused item will now provide an item of the same category. So if you want an armor, you merge armors. If you want a weapon, you merge weapons. This is really good because what would happen right now, what does happen a lot right now in a campaign, let's say you want an armor of destiny or you want an armor for your character, you can merge a lot of items together. Let's say you have a bunch of gray or green items, you merge them together and you get a bunch of weapons. That does happen, like a bunch of blue weapons. I mean, those weapons can be useful, but you really, really want armor. So that's an important thing. And second, rare items can now be fused into unique items. So we do get, we'll get a bunch of new unique tier purple items in this patch, as well as previous items we've had. But you can also gain them, and you can gain them by fusing rare items. However, there is a small chance of success, and failure will result in producing a completely useless piece of scrap, quite literally, just an item that is scrap, which can only be salvaged. Is C8 really just looking to incentivize people reloading their saves over here? Because I can tell you that if this is how it's going to work, like, oh, you have a chance of getting something really good or something completely useless, well, guess what? Reload a save. And just do it over and over again until you get something you want. Worth pointing out. Then there's new unique items, so Wormslayer Sword, the Cursed Armor, Scintillating Shield, Briar's Sheath, Briar Sheath, okay. Fellblade, okay, so Fellblade is becoming a proper item right here, because, yeah, it's a rare item, but it wasn't never really as good as it is in the lore. And then the 8 Burning Books of Lore. So what, we're getting the Books on Nagash for Khorne? I'm curious to see how this is going to work out. So apparently there's going to be positives, but also negatives. You can combine them for significant effects. And if you're Khorne, you don't necessarily have negatives. Then, as far as new unit goes, we get Hobgoblin Bolt Throwers. Yes. So this is not affected by the unit caps. And it might actually be better than the Goblin Bolt Throwers that the Greenskins have, right? So more accurate than their more haggard Goblin counterparts. This is going to be important for Chaos Dwarves because it's going to give them an anti-artillery, right? Something that's more accurate, something that's just dedicated there to dueling with enemy artillery in a fight. And then we get Blood Knights with sword and shield. So they lose their lances, but they gain a lot of staying power. So if you look at Knights of the Black Rose, for instance, if you look at Grail Guardians, this is a role that these guys will have in a battle. I'm not sure how much I personally use these in the course of a campaign, because with vampire counts, I much prefer having a reliance on infantry and heroes to, as well as a lord, to hold the line, whereas I want my cavalry to move around, do those shock cavalry charges. But in multiplayer, I think that's a very different situation. So I would view these guys as being more useful for the sake of multiplayer than single player, but I guess we'll find out on that subject. And that's really all there is. I'm curious about the AI changes, what they've decided to implement, how they've decided to implement it. I think the AI betas were good in what they showcased. I think there could have been certain things handled better, but we'll see what they do decide to do so. There were a lot of items that they apparently worked on and changed over here in this patch. So while it might not seem like, oh, What are they doing? They're just changing items. There's a lot of work, I imagine, put into changing these items. And yes, you did have this mess of a situation with items because of items from Warhammer 1, then 2, then 3. Wasn't exactly balanced. So I do think it's good that they're doing it, but I'm more interested in mentally in the AI changes as well as any kind of fixes and improvements for legendary lords. Like previously they mentioned that they would try and improve the supporter situation for Catherine and Costalton after the Kislev rework. Still waiting on that, CA, but we'll find out. Christine, signing out.